We don't train ourselves to be in that place enough. The people who do this kind of work, their success.
Hi, I'm Jeremiah. Welcome to the Wake Up Call podcast, where we talk all things sleep, wellness, and health. The Wake Up Call podcast is brought to you by Polysleep, the best memory foam mattress in Canada. Welcome to the Wake Up Call. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Dr. Lara Patriquin, who came all the way from the United States, actually not entirely true, but almost, to see me and have an amazing conversation about stress.
Yes.
And Dr. Lara is not only a physician, but you're also a writer, a coach. I've had the opportunity to meet you with my tech group, so you really help people not only manage and equip them with the appropriate tool to manage stress. But before we go into all that and the tools, we're technically wired to feel stress. Is that true?
So that is true, but I think it's only half the picture. And we tend to focus on this inherent capacity and tendency for stress as if it's all that we are. But what I really want people to understand, and what would have been helpful to me understand earlier in my life, was that our basic nature, who we truly are, I also call them our factory settings, our original operating system, is one of tremendous peace and tremendous joy. That's a really important thing for us to know and understand, right? Because what happens is we start out with this beautiful operating system, and you see it in children, right? Say, picture a 6-month-old, and she's fed, she's warm, she's got all her needs met. You look at the qualities of her inner operating system, her beingness, right? She's excited, she's connected, she's joyful, she's so happy to be alive that she can't even contain herself in her joy. Her little legs and arms are going crazy, you know? And that's who we truly are at our essence. We learn to be stressed. We learn to be angry. We learn to be fearful. And we learn to what we call identify with those levels over time. Also a very natural process. But what's important is that we don't have to become somebody new, right? I always thought, okay, one day I'll become new Lara 2.0. She'll be kind, and she'll be happy, and she won't be jealous, and she'll always be on time, and she'll be skinny, and all these things. And there was like this project I had to become somebody new. And really what we have to do is unlearn all the programming that came up to us. And I'll explain why we have that programming. And let that go to let our natural operating system be the main operator, not our stress. So really important fact, right? Our true nature, our beingness, is one of tremendous joy and peace and love, right? Is important because we can still connect to that. And we connect to that when we're in moments of flow. So you've felt it. I know you have. And so we get that in the moments of flow, in the moments of awe, in the moments of joy, right? In the moments of real connection. When you're having a conversation with somebody and you're not rehearsing what you're gonna talk about, you're not rehashing what you said, there's no voice in your head. I call it the thoughts per second come down, and we're in the flow of life, and we feel that joy. Now, that joy is just our innate nature shining through. I actually don't call joy an emotion. It's our factory settings that we're getting to touch into. Now, we can touch into them in different ways, and some of those are great ways, some of them not. Sometimes we feel it a little bit. We have a little bit of glass of wine. When people do drugs, that's what they're feeling, right? But we're going to talk about things that are skillful and that can bring us a lasting sense of happiness, right? So what we do is we try to get back to that joyful feeling, but we try to get there by lining up the outside world, by getting approval by this person, by reaching this goal, by getting this certain amount of money, by getting this car, by this relationship. Because in that moment, it's true, we do feel joyful, right? When I got into medical school, I was overjoyed. For how long? About a week. And then my regular anxious mind came back, told me I was an imposter, and made me an anxious physician. There's many of us, right? And so this notion that to get out of the stressful programming that we've instilled in ourselves, to do that by lining up the outside world, that's how we think that we're going to get there. And the truth is that's never going to give us a really lasting happiness, right? But yet we still think, I'll be happy when I have kids. I'll be happy when my kids leave the house. I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I get divorced, right? I'll be happy when I get a big house. I'll be happy when I downsize. So we're always chasing. And so we always have this sense internally that my life isn't okay. And so I have something I got to fix, so I got to get the next thing. And that sense of my life's not okay, I got to get the next thing, you cannot be happy when you have that sense. So when you get the next thing, that sense goes away for a bit and your real self shines through, but not for long.
I would like the audience to understand that it's not because you're a doctor and that you've studied
I learned
that
none
the
of
journey
this in
was perfect, right? So, Dr. Lara, please, because I know about your story and I would like the audience to know about your story. Where did this journey begin about, wellness, about this level of consciousness you've developed, and what triggered that?
So for me, none of this I learned in medical school. I was quite an anxious kid growing up. If I'd been born now, I probably been told I have an anxiety disorder or a depression disorder or something. If you'd published every one of my thoughts when I was younger, a lot of thoughts, first of all, very judgmental on others, very judgmental on myself, very unhappy. And, I just was managing the way I managed, and this was the 80s in Montreal. So that's with a lot of drinking and smoking and drugs. And I just engaged in a lot of bad, high-risk behaviors. And it kind of came to a point when I was in CEGEP, and CEGEP where I got kicked off the SOCIU. I kicked off the Planning Party Commission, which was the only elected position I've ever had, because I couldn't have a 65 average at school. And so I was like, oh my God, my life is just not going. That was just sort of the final straw, right? So I said, I'm going to clean my life up. I'm going to be successful and happy. And in my paradigm, a really not easy way to do it, but the most direct path to do that was to become a doctor. Because I saw doctors, my mother was a doctor. So I saw doctors as people who were together, moral, focused on helping other people, certainly not getting drunk and defacing public property. You know what I mean? He's like, actually, I don't. But that was sort of my trajet. So I worked really hard, and I cleaned my life up to a certain degree, got my grades up, got into medical school. And I was really happy, as I already said, for about a week. And then my anxious mind came back. And it was interesting because I met my husband the first day of medical school. And so we have this sort of same, very similar path in that he was very similar to me. We were both a bit rebellious, And we found ourselves 14 years later, 14 years of studies. It takes forever to become a physician. Mm-hmm. In medicine, we're constantly said, you'll be happy when? Delayed gratification. You'll be happy when you become a resident. You'll be happy when you finish your fellowship. And then finally, you'll be happy when you're a real doctor because you'll be out in the community. You'll be getting everything anybody wants. Respect, money, opportunity, connection, everything. You'll have it all, then you'll be happy. And, maybe 2 years later, we have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and from everything looked like the American dream. It was like we were perfect, but inside we were way less happy than we were the first day of medical school. And I joke with people that I was too hungover and too disorganized to get divorced. I mean, we were not in a good place, Mm-hmm. I can laugh about it because we get along so beautifully now, and mostly because we've understood how the mind works and how to work with it. But at the time, it really wasn't the case. And so I threw myself into it, especially for my children, because I noticed that I couldn't be present with my children, right? Kids just want you to be present. It's all they want. They just want your attention, your full, loving heart. And I couldn't do that. I physically couldn't get on the floor with them and be there for them. And I was like, whoa. And it was that same kind of oh boy, ça va mal, And so, I just threw myself into what is the science of well-being? What does everybody have to say about it? And the internet was coming out at the time. There was amazing, influences now from the East of Eastern religions and philosophies that have a very interesting take on the mind that science is actually backing now, their interpretation of how the mind works. And the mind to me is just the operating system that takes in the outside world and gives us thoughts and feelings. So this program that we have inside of us that generates these thoughts and feelings, how does that machine work? What are the bugs in that system? And there's some bugs, right? There's some real bugs. And once we understand how it works, we understand the bugs, then we can work with ourselves in order to return to this innate, joyful, happy presence that we are at our foundation. So I was like, I got to do this, and I got to do this in a hurry, because my kids need me. Yeah. And so I was just like, boom, And so shortly after that, I started meditation, which dramatically changed my life. I was given a really unique opportunity to teach meditation for the Air Force in Albuquerque, New Mexico, soon after I started. You could have said too soon, but it was an opportunity and it presented itself. And so I taught meditation to the military for 3 years. And it really showed me, its power and effect on people who have dramatically hard lives, way harder than what I had, like way harder. It was like my life but I had a massive safety net, And because in the military, they just say, yeah, you're going to do this. There's no resistance on their part. They practice, they do the meditations, they do what I tell them to. So they got the benefit. And they'd be like, yeah, for, half a day yesterday, I did not think once about the green zone in Iraq. And I was like, whoa, this is powerful, So it got me very excited. And so it really threw me into the practices to a very, very deep level, because I wanted to do justice to all of that. These people, it was very humbling, their service. So I just threw myself into all of that. And then that led to further teachings. Now I'm on the business circuit, and I go to companies and I teach this in companies. And it's been tremendous, because we're just not taught this. We're taught to believe everything we think. We're taught that every thought we have must be right. Even if one day you wake up, hey, my life is great. The next day you wake up, hey, my life is terrible. You don't go, oh my God, there must be something wrong with the voice that's telling me my life is great or terrible. But we have these voices in our heads that are constantly babbling, constantly talking to us. And most of what we think is from that programming I was telling you about.
Yeah.
Occasionally we get these beautiful thoughts, right? These beautiful sort of more action-oriented, intuitive, like when you started your business, or when you're like, oh, that's how I can solve that problem, or, wonderful thoughts. But most of what we think is repetitive, mechanical garbage coming off our subconscious mind, which is just a remembrance of anything that's ever gone bad for us in our life, right? All of our programming, all of our woundedness as kids is just stored in there.
And historically, this programming probably has drastically evolved throughout the years with the rise of technology, social media.
Oh, yeah. That just throws gasoline onto the whole situation. Yeah.
I was about to ask, because as conscious as we are today as a society, that well-being is just so important, your psyche, your nutrition, your sleep.
Yeah.
We still face so much personal resistance. And that's because of these intrusive thoughts, our day-to-day, the people around us, the fear of being judged.
That's right.
Before we jump into the techniques, meditation is great. What caught on my attention was the fact that you said, because they were in the military, well, you do what you're being told.
Yeah.
A lot of people who have free will find an excuse to say, it's not made for me.
That's right.
Where does that come from?
So that's the mind, okay? Let's get a few technical terms. The mind is the program that people talk about that generates most of our thoughts and feelings. I break it down into the thrive mind, which is these beautiful thoughts that sort of, if you're religious, you say they're whispered to me by God. If you're not religious, you know what I'm saying, right? Action-oriented, you hear it once, it's wisdom, great. I want everybody to have as many of those as possible. But they get crowded out by this programming. This is how the programming works, right? A child has this beautiful consciousness, but at the same time, a child is wired for survival. Now, if a child sees a dog and the dog nips at the child will remember everything about that event, stored in his subconscious mind, so that the next time something like that happens, he can respond better. He learns things. I shouldn't leave home. I shouldn't go stray too far from my mother. Dogs are dangerous. My body's fragile. These are really rational things to think about. Not a problem. He might have a deathly fear of dogs, but that's okay. This is the rub right here. Safety for a child is also approval, control, and security. Okay? So what's a child? What's a 3-year-old with no approval of anybody around him? What can a child do without the approval of other people? Nothing.
Yeah.
can't clothe himself, can't protect himself, can't feed himself, educate himself. He's toast, right? You can imagine a scenario where he's got 8 siblings and there's food enough for 6. The kids who have the most parental approval will get the food. So this desire for approval is hardwired. And the moment a kid feels disconnected, he registers that moment with the same alarm he did as he did the dog, right? So example, little boy goes to school. He's a little ADD. He's very jovial. I bet you kind of like you when you were little, right? So he shows up in class. The teacher, 22 other kids, she's got her own stuff. And she's like, Jeremiah, if you don't sit down right now, you're going to the principal's office. Yeah. That kiddo will register that event in his psyche with the same intensity as he did when the dog almost took him out. Same intensity, because it's a security issue in that moment. It's a safety issue. It's a life and death issue. So at the same time as kids have this beautiful, I call it kite flying, beautiful psyche that's amazing when their needs are met, they have this tremendous, tremendous survival. And that includes, we'll just talk about the approval part, just that part for now. So the next time that you get publicly disapproved of, even if it's just the rudeness of a waitress, yeah, it will bring up every time you have felt that kind of shame, and you will actually go back, and maybe not even consciously, but you will have that like, ooh, and you're going to feel like you're 3 or 4 years old again. And that's why we overreact, because we've accumulated all of this stuff in our psyche. And what does the kiddo learn? Now, this is a 3-year-old, right? This is not a wise person who says, oh, the teacher, she's exhausted. She's getting a 10% salary cut this year. This is why she's being the way she is. No. It's a 3-year-old. So he thinks, what does he think in that moment? I'm too loud. I can't be myself. Yeah. I should be more like my perfect older sister, right? These are the kinds of things. Then we write that with indelible marker into our subconscious mind. And in my talks, I have 100 of these thoughts that we have as children, and not one of them, like these underlying beliefs, I'm not good enough. I can't be myself. Money's hard to get. God is mean. I have to be perfect in order to get approval. I need approval in order to be successful. I need to be wealthy. I need to be poor. All sorts of crazy ideas. But I put those up on the slide, and I've shown it to hundreds and hundreds of CEOs such as yourself. Not one person has ever said, oh, no, I don't have that problem.
Oh, no. And some are massive and some are quirky. And one, for example, that I've identified thanks to your challenge, which we're going to talk about in the tools later.
Yes.
I hate to be late.
Yeah.
And I was like, but why do I feel such pressure? And when I was a kid, I was in private school in France. So
there's a lot of your problems right there.
Right? You're lucky if they call you by your last name. Don't ever hope to be called by your first name in France, right?
Yeah.
Like after the ring bell, if you're late.
That's right.
Oh.
It feels
sometimes you feel like, please kill me.
That's right. It feels like life and death.
And I think that follows me.
Exactly, it does.
Maybe it's a good thing, but sometimes the stress associated with it. Oh, God.
That's right. That's how we justify it, though. Maybe it's a good thing. Because if I didn't have that, then I would be late. Is that true?
No.
Right? So we justify these things and go, oh, because I think money's so hard to get, and I constantly feel a sense of scarcity around money, that's what's driven me to be wealthy. Is that true? Really? So a scarcity mentality makes you rich. I mean, science is kind of showing us the opposite right now, right? So then the mind is this massive program, but it really thinks that it's protecting you. It really thinks that you need this, that you still need security, approval, and control. And so it's like, no, we're going to do this. And that's why when you say, you should really meditate, the next morning, the guy's like, no, but that's the mind going, no, I want to stay in charge, right?
Yes.
Because we don't need that now. In fact, we need the opposite. We're happy when we love other people. We're unhappy when we're looking for love. We're happy when we're kind of flying a kite. But what's flying a kite when you're running a business? You're in the flow of life. You're working, you're making it up as you go. We can control only 4% of our world. But yet we look for control. And so we go, oh, my kids should be good. And this person should be this way. And you're like, yeah, you can do that until you're blue in the face. Right? it's really about dropping all of that programming, learning to let go of that programming. And we all have it. That's what I want people to know. We all have it. In fact, I gave the seminar that you were at, and I gave it recently to a group, and they brought their families. And a 16-year-old girl came up to me, and she said, we call it the yellow slide with all the underlying beliefs. She goes, wow, I thought I was the only one with all those thoughts. And she goes, were they not saying anything because they were being polite? I said, no, girl. Every single CEO in that room has those same thoughts as you. And she's like, holy moly, I had no idea. And I'm like, dang, I wish I'd known that at 16. A little less of this, you know?
and this energy it takes to just fight without the appropriate tools, right? Because let's be honest, most people are conscious indirectly that they have this thought. And everybody wonder, is it normal? Does everybody have them? We're very ill-equipped to combat them. And they gate us from happiness, because happiness is not chasing the next milestone. We'll never be happy. If we do that, we'll never be happy. So how do you, like you explained so well, not get rid, because it's almost impossible, right? I wish there was a solution, but how do we combat these thoughts?
That's right.
To let more space for the other one.
The thoughts, exactly right. Those are the tools that I teach in this 21-day challenge in the companies. But there's many tools, and spiritual and religious traditions at their base are there to show you how to do that. And so the tools that have worked really well for me, first of all, meditation is a tremendous tool. What I would tell people, generally speaking, is the subconscious mind is a little bit like the factory floor. You can't go into a factory at lunch and say, we're going to do this differently today. You have to go in the morning or you have to go at night. So the morning, the 15 minutes after you wake up, your mind is what's called an alpha state, where you can actually reprogram your subconscious mind. You can actually talk much more directly to your subconscious mind and give it instructions, okay? Same thing at night before you go to bed. So what I say, center your practice around that. The first 15 minutes of the morning, last 15 minutes at night, that's for you and your mind and how to improve your mind, how to go up in your levels, right? To be in a place of courage, acceptance, peace. Right? How to rise into those levels as opposed to being in the levels of fear, jealousy, anger, right? So that's the first thing. You want to do this first thing in the morning, and you want to say, okay, being in a better mindset is the most important thing in my life.
Yes.
At least for those 15 minutes, and just go, that's it. So first of all, what does that mean? First of all, it really means no phones right away, right? Because you wake up, you grab your phone. First of all, you're telling your subconscious mind, oh, today I want a day full of electronics. I want to be a day, but maybe I'm really good at getting little things done. And, I want to be good at writing emails. That's what you're telling your subconscious mind. And so you don't do that. You get your phone out of your room, and those first 15 minutes of the day. So first thing I do, I'll just guide you through my own morning. Okay. First thing I do 5 long exhales. First thing in the morning, I have a massive cortisol peak. We all do. And I sit up and I do 5 long exhales, which is just you breathe in and then the longest possible exhale through your pursed lips. And the longer the exhale, the more the benefit. You're telling yourself that it's not a fight or flight situation. The long exhale just signals that to you, right? So I do 5 of those, right? I might go to the bathroom, hydrate. Low-hanging fruit of well-being. Super easy. Hydrate maybe with some salts or something in there. Hydrate. If you need the coffee, do the coffee. And then it's meditation. So a little bit of reading. You find something that inspires you, whatever that is. And there's so many things you can read now. There's so many beautiful books. Sometimes I'll do a book. Sometimes I'll do a YouTube of one of the people I'm following, just to settle my mind, to put myself right in the same good direction. And then I'll do a meditation, typically a guided meditation. So I've got a bunch of my own. Sometimes I use my own. Yeah. And then I've got a whole bunch. There's so many others, and amazing, literally, there's so many incredible people out there that have this figured out, that we can get their knowledge for free on YouTube. So now my YouTube is kind of trained, And so then I'll do that. So then I'll do maybe a 10-minute meditation. Now, if I can also, if it's things are going my way, morning sunshine, the first thing, if you can get 10 minutes of sunshine in the first hour, really good for your well-being. Interestingly, I didn't realize how powerful that was. If I can get some exercise in, if I can get some weight-bearing exercise and or cardio, if I can get off sugar for the day, if I can limit my alcohol, if I can stay off the THC, right? That's a pretty good day. The last 15 minutes, okay? So your people were telling me that you had a challenge, no phone an hour before bed. Great idea. The phone's out of the bedroom. So I'm reading, I'm connecting with my partner, but it's not time for phone, right? And then I'm journaling. I'm doing gratitudes in the evening, right? A gratitude journal. I mean, these are the highest bang for your buck practices. Gratitude journal has been proven to be as effective as Prozac. So gratitude journal, a little bit of meditation, then a little bit of manifestation work. Manifestation just means tomorrow I want to feel this. Later in my life, I want to feel this. Let me feel it now. And that entrains my subconscious mind. It's sort of giving the scent to a dog, right? There's so many processes in our mind that we have to give our minds the direction we want to go to. So manifestation work for me is just like, how do I want to feel at the end of my life? How do I want to feel tomorrow? I literally just make that the object of meditation for 5 minutes. Feel it, think it, feel it. And then I go to bed. If I can do all that.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. But that's less than half an hour, right? I mean, minus the exercise.
Yeah,
which a lot of people understand and know anyways. But
like you said, for those who haven't experienced, especially I think weight exercise, I have Dr. Patriquin, who obviously is an ambassador for that, right?
Fabulous.
It's crazy to see how impactful it is. And when you combine that with this, it's as if you can reconnect with your emotions to a level and an extent you've never been able before. And
that's right.
That brings me to my next question. Does that indirectly impact your emotional intelligence in certain ways, or are these
100%.
Please tell us a little bit about that.
So to me, emotional intelligence is being so connected to myself and so capable of observing my thoughts and my feelings that they don't have the capacity or power to derail me, right? We become emotionally unintelligent when the emotion comes up and we're like, boom. And then that could be a fit of anger, but it also could be just a fit of disconnection. So I don't know, we're talking, you're boring me a little bit. I go, I don't like feeling bored. Then my mind goes off and we've lost connection.
Yeah.
And then I'm just not emotionally intelligent. I don't know how to if you're my employee, I don't know how to manage you. I don't know how to connect with you. And emotional intelligence is really like, how can I best connect with people? It may be more complicated than that, but that's my definition of emotional intelligence. And our capacity to connect with people is the most primordial thing. It's not even people say, it's a soft skill. I'm like, no, it's not. Where do people get in trouble? They get divorced. They lose their business partners. They don't act because they're still trying to please. Like, this is foundational. And this is what I love about teaching business people. They really get that.
Yes.
There's a dollar value to your emotional intelligence. There's a dollar value to you showing up in your best mind, So you guys are actually pretty open to all of it. It's wonderful.
Because we see the direct impact it has
100%.
Not only on us, the people around us, but the organization itself.
Exactly. You're in such a position, you're like a parent, the parents. And that's why I love teaching this to parents too, because how they show up, because those kiddos are looking for your approval because they think that's a life or death thing. So if they're looking to you for your approval, but you're caught up in something, you can't let your work go. And then they're like, oh my God, my dad doesn't approve of me. Because that's what a little 3-year-old will think. There's something wrong with me.
Yes.
And the cycle continues, right?
Yes.
And then there's the next generation. Yeah.
I would like to showcase a real life example that everybody experienced. Sure. And I would like to know your approach, Dr. Lara, to this. Everybody at some point, after a long day, they're tired, they go to bed, and the mind just races. I call it the hamster wheel. And it just won't stop.
That's right.
And you get angry at yourself because you know you're tired, you want to sleep,
more and more,
and you just can't.
Absolutely.
Why does that happen, and what can we do about that?
So what's happened is that all of the stuff that you have in your subconscious mind, right? Michael Singer just calls it your stuff. Your stuff. We know what it is. We know, right? It's gotten riled up because something has reminded it of a situation. So we have a whole part of every time we were stressed is registered in our subconscious mind, and it's indexed by the emotion, right? So when the subconscious mind records all of the times that we didn't get our needs met, it organizes it by emotion. So that's why when you feel shame and public humiliation because you were humiliated as a child, you'll remember that when you're 35 and it happens again, okay? So that's been riled up, and all of that data and information is being riled up. It's kind of like a snow globe, and it's just going like that. And at night, you can't divert yourself. So because what do we do? Our minds get all so crazy. We say, oh, okay, I'm just going to bypass it all and pay attention to something else. And we go on Angry Birds, or we go on the phone, right? We go on that stuff. You go into the coffee lineup now and people are just on their phones. You go in the airport, everybody's on their phones, right? Why? Because it's easier to do that than to be with this mind. Yeah. And that's the problem, though, that's the barrier to entry a little bit, is that mind, right? But if you can go beyond that mind of the thoughts and feelings, then you're in your original beautiful mindset that was there before the thoughts and feelings, that will be there after the thoughts and feelings. This awareness, this wise, beautiful awareness that's alive. It's hard to talk about what it is, but it's this beingness that's there once the thoughts and feelings die down. But we don't train ourselves to be in that place enough. And I tell you what, it's a travesty, because that place is so beautiful. And we have it and we're looking for it. But we stop because we go, oh my God, when I go into my mind, it's such craziness that we stop too soon, right?
You're so right.
So if we could it takes a little bit more time. It takes 10, 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes for that mind to settle. And initially it's going to be really hard. It's no fun. It's like when you start going to the gym, doesn't feel so good. But give it a couple months, you start feeling better about it, right? It's the same thing with exercising your mind. But you have to make it the most important thing. You just have to say, I want to go back to my factory settings. I want to feel joy, happiness every day. That you just have to be like, because for me, it was life or death. It wasn't life or death, but it was like my children's happiness. It's like, wow, I better get this right,
And like you mentioned, it was your children.
Yeah.
But in my case, it was just, why am I pursuing this?
That's right. That's right.
When you start questioning everything about, okay, I started a business, it's way harder than I thought it would be.
I don't know how you do it.
And then you feel like, oh, when it's going to grow, it's going to be easier. And then you're like, I still don't know why I'm doing this. And I have people, lives, salary that depends on me. It just makes it even worse. What's crazy is pursuing that is probably way harder than, for example, the gratitude challenge or journaling.
Yeah.
For some reason, our mind they're just so good at telling us what you're doing is actually stupid.
Because we're still addicted to control, security, and approval. You're still addicted to doing that path for the approval that it will bring you, and the security it will bring you, and the control it will bring you. And I'll tell you what, with your personality and who you truly are, if you just resided in who you actually were, I bet you wouldn't be working less. I think you'd be working more. Because fundamentally that's who you are. You're an entrepreneur. You're someone who you can't stop yourself. And this is what I think people don't understand is the more they sit in their own foundation, the more they sit in their own beingness, they're going to be more successful, not less. Because all of those beautiful qualities that have made you as successful as you are, that kind of just desire, that curiosity is going to be there, and it's going to be there in spades, Potentially could have changed your life. Yeah, potentially you could go, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. I want to do something else. Or I want to retire. I want to sell my business. Potentially that's true. But guess what? You'll be happy. So kind of who cares, right? But also in my experience, though, the people who do this kind of work, their success, and it certainly was my case, right? I was like, I don't care if I lose half my salary. I don't care if I lose my job at this point. And my life is so much more abundant. I'm making a lot of money. Not that that's the source of my happiness, but oh my gosh, it's so much easier now for me than it used to be. Right? So I really don't want people to think, oh, okay, I have a choice between being successful and being happy. Actually, you have a choice between being unhappy and being successful. Because at some point, you're going to hit that burnout.
You need that.
You're going to hit the burnout.
Yeah.
And then everything. And then you're going to do something stupid. You know what I mean? Or then you're going to drink. Or then something bad's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Or you're just going to lose interest.
It's the best way, I think, to realize or to experience how heavy carrying multiple burden can be. And most of these burden, we put them on ourselves.
I would say all of them.
Right?
Sorry, right? All of them, yes.
And it's us against us, and
it's us
the perception, not even the perception of others, but the perception we have about the other.
That's exactly right.
Which is crazy, right?
We're trying to get our own approval.
Yeah.
And we think, okay, once I do it right, I'm going to approve of myself. The way I talk to myself sometimes, I still catch myself. And I get upset at myself. I came over on the metro and I forgot my earbuds. I'm like, Lara, you're so stupid. How come you didn't bring your earbuds? And then I'm like, first of all, who's talking to me? And since when's that a barometer? This tremendous question someone asked me the other day. Is it worth withholding love? Like the next time you do something like forgetting something or you're late, you should do this when you're late. Ask yourself, is this worth withholding love? Because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I just felt it. I was like, oh, where are my earbuds? I'm like, oh, I'm withholding love. And I was like, oh my God. Still.
I hope we convince people how important that is.
Yes.
You've touched base upon some techniques, tools, one that works for you.
Yeah.
I would like to quickly touch upon, because we are going to have the chance to speak another time in detail about that. But you worked something called the 21-day challenge, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Why this work frame works, and could you give us a brief overview
Absolutely.
Of this challenge?
So the 21-day challenge is the challenge that I bring when I speak to the tech or Vistage groups, and also when I come and go into companies. Because the thought is, it's really good to understand this stuff, but until you practice, you're not going to see benefits that are going to last. So I invite people to take one or two of the practices, and we do them during the day. And then I invite them for 21 days to do the practice. I partner people 2 by 2. They do a gratitude challenge. They text each other 3 things they're grateful for every day to bring that gratitude in. And then the other practices are, there's some breathing techniques in there. There's meditation. There's journaling. There's acts of service, going out and helping people. And then there's also, how am I doing my media, right? It's really checking in on how I'm using my phone, And so then we commit to 1 or 2 practices, and with your partner, you make yourself accountable to your partner so that you're actually doing the practices to see if you can move the needle on your well-being. It's just an experiment. I tell people, give me 12 minutes a day, preferably when you wake up, and to see if we can move the needle. And everybody who's had any kind of consistency, even 15 out of 21 days, gets back to me and says, you know what, I feel better. I'm not as reactive. I'm more present with my kids. My employee said something about me the other day that I've changed. Things are moving, things are changing. Doesn't take that much, right? And what I do then is I send them an email every morning with a new guided meditation. And so the meditations are kind of gradual. It's a mini meditation course that then they can learn how to meditate throughout those 21 days. So as we call it the 21-day challenge, there's a little booklet that goes with it. I explain a little bit what we were talking about. And you can find that online. And we're offering it to your listeners.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Easy.
And I really encourage everybody to really give it a try.
That's right.
It's not only good for yourself, but the person I did it in my tech group, Patrick, became a very good friend of mine.
Isn't it wonderful? That's right.
You get to text positive.
Yes.
And then you get to realize how much you care about that person in a way.
Right. That's right.
It's just, it was wonderful.
Yeah. So what are you going to do for your 21-day challenge?
You know what? The hardest thing for me was really the meditation.
Yeah.
And it takes time and practice.
Yeah.
And I think I was just too hard on myself.
Yeah.
Because as soon as your mind starts...
So we've got another 21-day challenge coming up. Yes. So I would invite you to...
Definitely.
You're going to do it. You find yourself a partner and we'll do it.
Definitely.
Wonderful. And you know what? I'm going to commit to a daily walk I tell everybody, if between 7 and 7:30, everybody walked, they'd have a different life. So I'm pretty good with all the other practices. So I'm going to take that challenge of doing the daily walk.
Everything that we set in motion for our well-being impact the other one. Good sleep
100%.
impact your capacity and your resilience to stress and your openness to work on yourself.
That's right.
Impacts your nutrition.
100%.
Impacts your capacity to have more energy to then do sports, which impacts how well you sleep.
100%.
And it goes both ways.
So great. It's so great.
It's hard for people, and I acknowledge that, to start it.
Yeah.
But the benefits of starting it.
I call it the upward spiral.
Yes.
So you're either in an upward spiral or you're a downward spiral. We know what a downward spiral feels like.
Yes, and I really encourage people to try that. So we're going to leave in the description.
Yes.
Dr. Lara, thank you so much for joining me
so
today.
Much. It was such a pleasure.
I just want to say that next episode, I really want to go deep into understanding the 21-day channels, maybe go a bit more into the technical aspects of what's happening within us when we do this. Yeah. And I invite everybody to tune in for the next episode.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to The Wake Up Call. If you like what you heard today, do not forget to rate, follow, subscribe, or perhaps leave a comment below. A new episode of The Wake Up Call drops on the third Wednesday every month. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single episode. For all of us here at the Polysleep studio, I'm Jeremiah Curvers. Until next time.